Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. Today I thought of another deck that is a crush, and Masha, if you're watching, I forgot to mention this when I was listing my favorites in our comments. One of my older decks, my first deck that I've ever had is the 1JJ Swiss. And for those of you who've been with me long enough, you know the story behind my 1JJ Swiss. And if you don't, I'm sure it's I don't know if it's in a playlist or not, to tell you the truth. I'll have to try to include the story of 1JJ Swiss down below, a link down below, I'll add it. But this is my long-term crush. It was the first tarot deck I ever had. And as I mentioned, because of conditions being what they are right now in the United States, and not my future being rather uncertain, my financials, I have put a moratorium on purchasing new decks. The Fortuna Opal Omen was my last hurrah. And I'm going to be very conservative. And it's not like I don't have many wonderful decks to show. I have hundreds. I have probably at least 500 decks, maybe more. I don't know. I haven't counted. So I figure there's probably some that you may be familiar with, but that you don't own, or some that you never saw, or you would like to see how they work in a spread. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to use my signature spread that I've shown many, many times on this channel, and I've described how you see I do readings, so you just see how I do it. By virtue of seeing me how to do it, it shows how to do it. And I know some of you maybe like it, and it's a 14-card spread, so it's a conclusive thing, and it's a really good organic spread. That's like this position means this, and then you have to reconcile a card in that position. It's not like that. It's fluid. You'll lay the cards down and you'll let them talk to each other, and they tell you the message, and that's why I love this spread. So let's do that. And I figured I would show one of my favorite decks, my first deck. It's my heart sentimental first deck. And I figured I'd show how this reads and why it still remains a favorite deck. I have an interesting question this time. As a creator, I watch other creators, not generally tarot readings. I don't watch tarot readers for the most part. I mean, every now and then maybe I will, but like once every 3 months or something, I'll catch it. If I want to see a deck in action, then I'll catch a reader. However, I do have two exceptions. I do watch Masha, and I do watch Fesar from 78 Puertas. Maybe not every video they ever do, but pretty regularly, If I see something if I see something from either of them on my feed, I'll check it out, and I'll support them in that way. And they do that for me too. But I do watch other channels that have nothing to do with tarot. Like I'll watch just things that interest me, And I've noticed on multiple occasions that these channels that have nothing to do with tarot have made it a point on a number of occasions to say, when they're talking about whatever it is they're talking about, they throw in, but tarot readers are frauds, tarot is fraud, or all psychics are frauds, and it's like, it has nothing to do with your channel. Why would you even mention tarot readers or psychics? Why would you even mention it? Like, how does that pop up? And if it was like once or twice, but I've noticed that's like, it's happening a lot. And I just thought, why would they do that? So that's my question. I'm putting it to the universe. I'll go off and meditate and shuffle the cards in my meditative way, but I just was telling you ahead of time, that's the question. Why would they do that? Why do some YouTube channels feel the need to criticize tarot readers or psychics randomly on their channel when Their channel has nothing to do with the mystical world. I just don't get it. Anyway, that's it. Let me go off into my place, do my meditation, and I'll be right back. And here's the box. I've had this for a very long time. I think 1975. This is my 50th anniversary. I think in July, or somewhere around July, June, July, or August, sometime during the summer months will be my actual 50th anniversary. And I wasn't sure if it was 75 or 76. But then I realized it was 75. Something reminded me of it recently, and then I realized it happened in the year of 75. Okay. Here we have 8 cups. So this card for me is emotional stability, okay? Queen of Swords. Now, if we read the card as an individual card, it's a direct woman, an intelligent woman, a quick-witted woman, maybe a sarcastic woman, or if it's not representing a woman, those characteristics. And another sword, the Ace of Swords. Wow, okay. Then we have 9 batons. The Lover, this is the front and center card. A bond, a partnership. Wow. The Hanged Man. The Emperor. Another 9. 9 of batons. Excuse me, I'm looking at the 9 of batons. The 9 of coins. So coins and batons don't interfere with one another, but batons and cups do. A cup card that's surrounded by batons and swords to some degree could be agitated by the presence of them and proximity to it. And the Hermit. Wow. So in a 9-card spread so far, we have 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 out of the 5 cards are from the Triumph order. So there's some deep-seated stuff there. And front and center of the core 9 is a card of bond, like some type of bond. It could be a romantic bond. It could be just some type of an emotional bond or an agreement. It just could be some type of an agreement. For those of you who are new to my channel, or you're new and you haven't, these cards that are up here are part of my spell that I've done, and I'm leaving them out with at any rate. What I do is, after I lay the core 9 cards, and as I mentioned, these cards don't have positional meaning, so you don't have to reconcile what the Hermit means in this spot. I don't read it like that. I read it fluidly, okay? What I do is I borrowed an idea from the occultists. I think it was Atea in particular, or his teacher, or his mentor rather, whose name escapes me. I'm sure one of you knows it, where they would do like quintessential cards. Now, they didn't do this spread in particular, and they don't maybe do it the way I do it, but I borrowed the concept of having a quint card. So for example, we have an 8 here, and we have a 1, so that would be 9. So that would be calling up the Hermit card. Now, because I have multiple copies of this deck, I have no trouble getting another Hermit card to put at the end of that row. Then here we have another 9. Oh, we have 3 9. Oh no, we have two 9s and an 8. Excuse me. So we have a 9 and a 6. So that would be 15, and 15 and 12. You know, I can't do the math anymore because my brain is not so great. But I think that's 37. 15 or 27 minus 20. I'll check on paper, but 27 minus 22 would be 5. So that would be the Pope. And then here we have 4 and 9 is 13. And 13 and 9 would be 22. So that would be the World card. Excuse me, that would be the Fool card, my bad. And then I'll figure out what the quint for the entire spread is, and I'll put it there. So I'll be right back. Alrighty, so I added up the cards and to subtract 22. And for the top row, we got 9 for the Hermit, 5. In this case, I said Jupiter. I said the Pope, but it's Jupiter. Because this is a Best in Song deck, I forgot to mention that. And then 22 or 0, either way, we still, it's the Fool for this row. Now I add these up and subtract 22, and whether this is the Fool as 0 or the Fool is 22, the outcome makes no matter, which is why I like to do minus 22 rather than adding I don't know, other people do it different ways. And I think when I started years ago, I did it a different way, but this is the way that really works out numerically. It's just brilliant. And for the entire spread is the Temperance card. Now, for those, I'd like to just mention this. For those of you who use this spread and you enjoy this spread, you have my blessing. If you use it on social media or in a public place, if you could just throw me a bone and give credit that, the spread was created by or developed by Marilyn from Tarot Clarity, I'd really appreciate that. I would do the same for anybody whose work I used. Okay, so front and center of the question, or the meat of the tomato, as I mentioned, is the Lover card. So there's a partnership, there's some kind of commitment they have to another party, perhaps, that makes them feel like they can't do this. I don't know. It's just the front and center card, and I'm reading it in the context of the question. Now, we do have, as the end cap for that row, what would traditionally be the Pope. In this case, it's not the Pope, but it is a god, and it's Jupiter. And then in between that partnership and that bond with the god, we have punishment, right? So I'm wondering if there's a sense that it's against their religion, and they just feel like they can't. And then, the cap for the entire spread, but it happens to fall on this row, is a virtue, right? We have Temperance, which is a virtue. So it's to temper, to remove toxicity. So I'm wondering if for some of them, or one in particular that, boy, oh boy, burns me up because he says it almost every single time he does a show. And he's from a red state, so normally I wouldn't think along those lines, but I'm irked, I'm put out a little bit, now he's never gotten political, and he's never said anything, which kind of disturbs me, because if you have a voice and the world, what's happening in our country is a disgrace, I think you need to have a voice, and I think you need to speak up. So I'm starting to get the picture that this person may not be sensitive or caring of people like me, because it doesn't fit in with his what he thinks his moral plan is. Now, with a little education, a person who thinks that, tarot cards are evil or psychics are frauds, you can't get much more religious than a tarot deck, because the deck itself is, the Triumph cards. I'm preaching to the choir, because if you're here, you know this, but for the newcomers who maybe want to learn, or you're just interested, you fell on this channel and you're just interested in seeing what somebody like me has to say, it's like a roadmap for virtuous living, So it's kind of like peculiar to think that it's against God, Now, the only card I didn't address in this row was the 9, and the 9 of batons. Now, it could be a collective energy, collective social structure. That's how I see it. In keeping with what I see in the rest of the line, in the context of the rest of the line and the question, I just see it as his congregation, his group of people, his circle. There's just no room for it, because it's against his belief system, particularly, I think, with religion and what he considers to be virtue. He's above it. So I probably don't even have to read any more of the other cards because I think it spells it out pretty clearly. At least that's one aspect of it. Now, let's see what other row kind of interests me. Well, the fact that we have 2 hermits and we have 2 nines. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 occurrences of the number 9. And 9, if you look at 9 just for itself, it's like coming to a conclusion. It's something that's coming to a conclusion. Sometimes people might associate the hermit with the old man from the old year and making room for the new year. That's one way to see it. It's also wisdom. It's also, some people might see it as enlightenment. In some cards, there is a candle rather than an hourglass. So there's a sense of a little bit of Diogenes present, he's just like a capuchin or a monk, right? A wise person who's roaming around and shedding light wherever he goes. So this card, in this case, is flanked by the Fool, which, I can understand then, the idea that we're frauds. He thinks it's a fraudulent or a foolish or a reckless pastime. Again, next to another 9 and a 4, the Emperor, a higher authority. Wow. So I guess this individual that I'm thinking of, although he's not the only one, and in my head, I was thinking of him, but I was also thinking of another person, another YouTube channel that does it on the regular, although not as much as this first guy. So again, we have a higher authority. Now this one is secular, so it's not religious, but he's followed by 2 nines. And then the Fool. So I guess he sees it as foolish counsel. This I would, see, like he sees it as foolish counsel. And he's superior, he's above it. I guess he feels like he's above it or they're above it. And but it's not just a 9, but it's a card of coins. It might also be who he thinks his audience is. If he's in a red state and there's a lot, nobody on the particular channel even breathes a word of what's going on in the dialogue, and doesn't even breathe a word of what's happening. And I'm starting to lose my respect for the guy, to tell you the truth. But I guess part of it could be that he knows his audience, and his audience maybe has this mentality, and he, doesn't want to lose his audience. Well, that's kind of interesting. And in the top row, it could, not always, but who are the tarot readers? And I know I have many men on my channel who are interpreters of the cards. So, but I think if you have a closed mind, so I know that there are men readers. I'm not speaking from my perspective, but sometimes when a person has a closed mind to these things and they generalize who we are, I think they think of us as women, like it's like a foolish woman. Now, I don't see the Fool card anywhere near the Queen of Swords, and the Queen of Swords has a sharp wit, and maybe he sees it as a woman's thing. So maybe on the surface, because if he sees it as a woman's thing, maybe that he's above it, or it's it's diminutive in some way. But I'm wondering if this row doesn't kind of show that he secretly kind of digs it, and there might be a secret. Maybe he'd like to learn more about it. because, here we have a woman with her sword, her quick wit. An opportunity is being presented, and then the hermit is counsel, casting light, maybe an interest in it. And then 8 cups is certainly a stable emotional thing. It's not, it is surrounded. Okay, so it could be agitated by the presence of these other cards. So despite the 8 of Cups, for me, signifying emotional stability, it is surrounded by cards that could agitate it. So maybe he knew somebody when he was a kid growing up. Maybe there was somebody in his family, like a grandparent or a female, who did this on the regular. And maybe it caused friction, or maybe there was conflict with that individual in the family. It could be deep. It could be deep rooted, because we keep seeing 9s, and although 9 means coming to an end, but I'm wondering if it represented something of his childhood, or something from some association he might be making. That's a possibility with a woman. But I also think, this road to me, kind of, the feeling I'm getting is that there's an interest. There's an interest in it, but that maybe it's woman's work, or maybe it's something women do. And ultimately it's, it's conflicts. He's got this badge of religious, and he's pious, and he's self-righteous. And there's a sense, because why else? Well, these cards surprised me. I wasn't expecting them to say these things, or I wasn't expecting myself to understand the cards in this way, but it kind of makes sense. Because his channel has nothing to do whatsoever with tarot readers or psychics. And so why it would come up on the regular that they're frauds and he doesn't like them and he doesn't believe in it, why would that come up? So it's speaking about himself and the other person too. It's something about their own selves. And I'm taking this to be the person that I'm thinking of in a red state. I don't know where the other one is. The other one is probably in California, some liberal place. But because his audience tends to be, the other guy's audience tends to be liberal. But that doesn't mean he is. So isn't that interesting? Now, don't you think this deck, though, is beautiful when you see it in mass? And I think a lot of times we only lay cards like 3 or 4, maybe 5 at a time. But I really enjoy this spread because I get multiple features or multiple aspects of a question. I don't have to ask 3 questions because the cards will maybe answer 3 aspects that I didn't ask, but it tells me what I need to know. That's what I always ask the universe. Dear universe, tell me what I need to know to bring the most meaningful interpretation out of the cards that I randomly put on the table. So, and then just seeing them in mass, like it's a great spread. I love this spread, and I'm proud I developed this spread. I love this spread. And at any rate, I hope you enjoyed this video. It's short and sweet, it's under 25 minutes, so that's cool. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, and please be kind.